Hey, praise the Lord, guys. My name is Straw Greenhorn. And again, he put forth another parable unto them, saying, Behold, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that sowed good seed into his fields. But while men slept, the enemy came and sowed wheat among the tares. Now when the blade was brought forth, the wheat came. But then lo and behold, the tares sprang up also. Now the servants of the household came unto the good master and said, Sir, did thou not plant good seed into thy field? Whence cometh all the tares? And the good master said, An enemy had done this. Then the servants of the household said, Shall we then go and bind the tares up into bundles? But the good master said, No, lest peradventure you bring up some of the wheat with the tares, but rather let them grow together, and at the time of the harvest I will send forth my reapers, and they shall gather first the tares into bundles to be burnt, but the wheat I will gather into my barn. So here's another parable spoken by the Lord. A lot of these parables, he uses different stories, but they convey the same meaning. So he starts out by saying that he spoke another parable unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that sowed good seed into his field. But while men slept, the enemy came and sowed wheat among the tares. So as you know, it was God who created the heavens and the earth. It was God that made man. It was God that reaches out to man to teach them the right way. In the Old Testament, only the children of Israel had the statutes of God. No other nation had all these judgments of righteousness and how to do right by people and how to live right. All these other nations, they didn't know that it was a sin to worship, these idols made of wood and stone and gold and silver as the molten calf that they made. So it's God that plants the good seed. But you got to understand that the devil, he's a fallen angel, he's a fallen being, and he doesn't want to go to his punishment, his destination by himself. He wants to take as many as he can. So this is where we get this issue where for God, he sows only good seeds. He teaches people the right way, how to live and how to think. But then, here we see the enemy come in and sowing tares among the wheat. But notice it said that while men slept, and what this means is that what is a state of sleep? It's a state of being unconscious and unaware. And it's how the devil works. He works in darkness. Things will be happening even around you, and he'll try to hide it as much as he can until it's too late. The things that happen in darkness is how the devil works. So he said that while men slept, and that's the key word, because he works in the dark, right? While men slept, he came and sowed tares among the wheat. Another parable that talks about sleeping is the parable of the 10 virgins. It said that while they all slept, while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. So slumbering and sleeping can also be falling into a state of routine. You're not really purposeful. You're not really aware of the things that you're doing. You're just going by routine. And some of these might be good routines, some might be bad routines. While men slept, the enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat. So this, sleeping, like I said, is being in a state of passiveness. It's not unconsciously unaware. You ever watch any of those comedies where they're doing a script in high school, and you'll see that the kids, the bullies, they'll go and get one of the lesser, kids, and they'll pretend to be their friend while setting them up, to make them look stupid or to do something funny to them so that everybody can laugh at them. It's kind of like that, being asleep, that, things can be being planned, around you, and it can be unfolding, and, you'll be in the dark. So he plants this seed while you're unaware. Because, there are people that he could come barefaced and bold to and give them the seed and they'll take it. Like the guy who wrote the Satanic Bible, that's one example. How can you write a Bible about this devil and give him praise and, draw other people into him, knowing what he has planned for you? Because this guy, it was said on his deathbed, he was having all kind of crazy visions, and he was crying and said that, he did something wrong. He made a mistake, So there are people that he'll present it to barefaced and bold, and they will accept it. But for the majority of people, it's going to be unconscious and unaware. While men slept, the enemy came and sowed wheat among the tares. And then, behold, when the blade sprung up, the wheat grew up, but then they saw the tares. And the servants of the good man, they said, Sir, did thou not plant good seed into thy field? Whence cometh all these tares? And then he said, An enemy had done this. Because they could tell that something was wrong. It wasn't harvest time as the parable ends in the harvest time. It wasn't fully harvest time, but things were beginning to spring up, and you could see that something was wrong, something was amiss. Where did all these other things come from? You can't really put your finger on it, but you can see that something's wrong. And then he explains to them that an enemy had done this because we only planted good seed. at some point the enemy he came in, because he said that he that is not with us is against us. And I'm sure that by the nature of what the enemy sowed, that it was causing problems in the field. These tares, they compete with the other plants for nutrients, for sunlight. They cause all kind of problems. They cover the whole area and makes it difficult for the other plants to grow. So then the servants of the household, they came up with a solution. Shall we go and pull them up and bind them? But the good master, he had the wisdom enough to say that no, let's peradventure you pull up some of the wheat by accident, because sometimes when these things start to grow out, and why he said that is because sometimes when these things start to grow out, like in the beginning they look very similar. So I imagine that not all the plants were at the same stage of development. Some were ahead so that you could see clearly that these were becoming tares or they were becoming wheat, and some were younger in their development where it would be more difficult to tell. So instead of going out there and having to reason and argue, is this one a wheat or a tare, let's do something simple. Let's let them identify themselves, because if we wait until the harvest, then it's going to be easy to tell. He said, let them grow together, because at the harvest time I will send my reapers forth, and the reapers, they are the angels, and they shall gather first the tares. The tares, and it was a preacher that recently revealed this unto me, that notice it's the tares that get pulled first, and this makes them feel that they're the ones that are being selected, they're the chosen ones, they're the ones that are called and destined, when actually they're being pulled to be burned first. But then the wheat, when it's left back, it gets gathered into the barn where it's harvested, it's used to make all kinds of things to eat. It's going to be real easy to see at the harvest time. There's a funny story that's told in my country, Jamaica, where I'm from, that there was this guy, I don't know if it's a real story or not, but he wanted to come to America, the land of better opportunities, but they wouldn't give him a visa, and he had tried many times, so he was desperate. So what he did was he left on a banana boat. He hid among the bananas. So what he did, he painted himself green. And they started out with the green bananas that they travel on the boat. So by the time they get to their destination, they get ripened a little bit, right? So what ended up happening when he painted himself green, it took, I don't know how long the journey took, but after a while, the bananas, they started to get ripe. When bananas get ripe, they turn yellow. So by the time he got to the port of destination, wherever it was, maybe Florida, whatever was closest to the destination, that when they came, they saw all these yellow bananas and he was still painted green. So it's going to kind of be like that with the wheat and the tares at the harvest, because it's the angels that will be sent forth. It said that the dead in Christ shall rise first. It's the angels that are the reapers. And the danger about this is that, the tares, they won't even realize why they are tares. They just do the things that they do. A real life example, I once knew this lady that, she was just an awful lady, man. She was just, to hear her story, when she was young, her grandmother actually taught her how to do voodoo, how to do witchcraft, and how to request things in the spirit world. So she would use this for everything. She would, if she needed money to pay her bills, she would cast a spell and somebody would bring her money. If she needed food, she would do the same thing. There was, somebody that she was interested in romantically, same thing. She would cast a spell on them. So this lady, she was just awful, man. She ended up putting spells on all of her neighbors, the ones she didn't like. This all started from what the grandmother taught her. Me personally, growing up, seeing my grandmother, I saw my grandmother worship in church until tears came to her eyes. That's the first. I didn't even know that was possible. So I got that kind of experience from my grandmother growing up. But then her grandmother, she taught her this, and the last thing I heard about this lady is that she was giving people the mark of the beast. Like that's how advanced that she got the spirit world. All right. So that's just an example of a person, an enemy sowing tares among the wheat. Right. A good example would be of God sowing His seed as a child growing up, seeing your parents, go to church, being deep and grounded in the faith. They get taught good things, and these things get reinforced, and it's taught from a place of love. It's taught from a place of patience, because way too many families, like they're so strict with their kids about faith. It becomes totally antagonizing. It's not a good, a positive, or a loving experience for them. And what these kids do, as soon as they get 18 and they're out of the house, they want nothing to do with faith. They want nothing to do with God. It's because, these things, they were forced onto them, instead of, taught and given the understanding that, this is why we do this, because, this is the advantage, this is the benefit of why we do it. And if teaching them real life examples of all right, so if you go the other way, this could happen, that could happen. And, it's walking with them instead of like, saying, all right, so like, one of my friends, he told me that, growing up, he, like his family, they forced him to go to church, they made him sit down and, he had to, it was just an awful, the way he described it, it was kind of like a concentration camp for him. And when he got older, that was it. Nobody could get him to even step foot in a place of worship. So a good seed being planted is a parents that they teach their children, and they come from a place of love and encouragement in the faith, rather than saying like, oh, I'm your father, you have to go, I'm your mother, if you don't, and they start laying out punishments for if you don't do things, using negative reinforcement. So I mean, that's the best example I could come up with for positive, God sowing his seed versus the enemy sowing his seed. My name is Straw Greenhorn.